So the topic that I want to discuss today is about what Studio Decode as an architectural practice that we believe in, which is about evolving from the traditional wisdom that's already existing and applying it in today's context with contemporary technologies. So in a simple word, it's basically a new architecture paradigm that is built upon the traditional wisdom. So there are three parts to it. The first part is just a brief touch upon climate change to understand the scale and the violence that it has caused and affected us as human beings, and why it is important for us to understand so that as an architect, how we can address it, as we play a huge role in addressing or mitigating climate change. So I'll skip this part, which is about what is climate change. We all know about, the global average temperatures rising by 2 degrees and 3 degrees and the causes and effects for that. So I'll skip the basic introduction of what is climate change and the greenhouse effect and the gases that are emitted, which causes global warming. A lot of that is also to do with architecture and the construction industry. And the causes of climate change, like I said, few of it that affects us directly is, the construction waste that is generated, then the deforestation that occurs because we're occupying more and more of the land area that should actually be part of the forest, the mining that occurs again because of the materials that we specify a lot of times in our building industry. So there's little details if we address as architects of choosing the right material or building such that the construction waste is minimized, we can play a huge role in mitigating climate change. And just so that we understand that half of the Earth's land needs to be conserved if we want long-term health of the planet, as stated by E.O. Wilson. It's a fantastic book that he has written as well. And I highly recommend that people read that book. And this is also about architecture, urban design, urban planning, the choices that we make, how we travel to the workplace or from the residence to the workplace or for other aspects. The choices that we make play a huge role. What we eat plays a huge role. So I just wanted to put a comparison over here, which is quite an interesting comparison about how one cow is equal to 1,000 liters of petrol. So it is important for us to know that it's not only the automobile industry that we keep addressing, but we also address how and what we do with the lands that are available that have been changed from forests to agriculture, not for food for human beings, but food for the cattle. So that is also an important, very important aspect, which is directly relating to the global methane emissions. So again, this is part of urban design, urban planning, that we need to understand that how we develop water. Right now, water is a huge crisis. So how we design such that water is taken into consideration. And we should know that diarrhea is one of the results of poor sanitation and water supply. And we should also know that a child dies every 15 seconds. But we don't address diarrhea as much as we address other diseases. So indirectly, it is coming back to us as urban designers and architects as to how are we doing water relevant design in today's architecture and city planning, urban planning, or even a community planning. The second part, so the first part was the climate change and the violence that it has happened. Like I told you, how many people die, how it affects us, the diseases and all that. The second part is setting up the stage in terms of understanding the significance that we have only one Earth. We have only one choice. There is no planet B as of now. Mars is still in research stage. So right now we have only one Earth. So for that, we also need to understand what is the ethics that we have developed as an architectural community or just as a community in general. What is the ethics that we have? We all understand ethics when we say good manners or mannerisms towards hygiene, towards respect. But what is the design ethics that we have evolved? It is important to understand what is our collective behavior? What is our commitment to save the earth for future generations? How should we behave so that we are in the right path towards uh, mitigating climate change? What is our role, and how are we the problem, and how do we address the problem? So I think it's important that we write down and discuss the design ethics, not just the design ideologies in terms of a style, but ethics in terms of how should we behave as a community. And it is also important that the exposure is there, so that, because we will not fight to say what we don't believe. If I just read that out, you cannot love what you do not know. You cannot know what you have not experienced. Thus, ignorance is not an excuse, ignorance is not escapism. So, we will need to develop an ethic of our own. So, many a times, students or young architects, it is very easy for them to say, I was not aware of it, I didn't know. But it is our duty and our responsibility to be aware and play an important role in resolving the problem, the larger problem that we have. Again, just to briefly touch upon this, in during about a couple of hundred years ago, when slavery was predominant, many industries said that slavery cannot be abolished. It is a necessity. Otherwise, economies will collapse. Now, several centuries later, people are saying the same thing. It's only the difference is they are saying that we cannot be environmentally responsible at all times. Otherwise, the economy will collapse to run our industry. So, which is absolutely untrue, because if we don't do it now, then tomorrow there will be nothing left for them to run an industry. So, it is important that we recognize irresponsibility of the environment also as a crime. Just like ecocide is considered, it should be considered as a fifth crime against peace. So I think the severity or the gravity of why and how industries or us in general in all businesses should give importance to how we are environmentally responsible is critical. So this is just to understand the typologies of how it's changed. We all understand that we used to, it used to be huts, now it's buildings. Work in the outdoor has become offices. Temples, which are under the tree, have become huge buildings. So it's finally become an urban jungle. I'm not saying that we need to stop building, but we just need to take responsibility in how we build and how we use our infrastructure. So to give you a brief, very quick description of what Bangalore has right now, even though it's called the Garden City, it has only 2.01 square meter of green space per person, whereas the average or the recommended should be at least 10 square meter of green space per person. That is the rate at which we are losing our greenery to the urban development. So coming to the third part, which is a traditional wisdom and techniques based on which we design our buildings. So it can be energy efficient or responsible or net zero, whatever you want to call it. But the idea is towards responsible architecture. So what is our basis? What are we studying? So we go back to the historical buildings where Jali, the Kanat, how they used to take in water and store water underground, and then it would travel through multiple houses in a community, and water would be drawn in from that, which was very common in the historical days. But we don't have that kind of a system anymore. Those natural, very intelligent systems in some sense, the courtyards, which were also very common, the malkas, which are the wind towers. It was just different words that they used for a similar kind of an approach to naturally control the conditions of the environment within. So how do we start our project? Once we've understood, okay, historically, how did they approach controlling the climate internally? Then what do we do? So we first get a data analysis. It's a simple data analysis to understand the sun movement, the sun path, the temperature, the humidity, prepare the bioclimatic chart, which is the most important in my opinion, because it addresses and it informs you very easily, very quickly, what are the different ways of naturally cooling a building. So if your lines fall within that trapezoid, you understand that you have to use high thermal mass or evaporative cooling or a combination or natural ventilation. So the minute it goes outside the comfort zone, we understand which is the system that we need to use, or a combination of systems that we need to use. The second thing is the layering. Again, this is a transition or our interpretation of how walls were built in historical buildings. The walls used to be very thick. A lot of times it would be 3 feet, 4 feet thick. Of course, we cannot make walls of such size or such width. So what do we do as an interpretation? We do a system of layering. So a single wall has become a double wall with insulation. Then a double wall can of landscape or water. So it's the multiple layers that give you the same kind of a effect similar to a large wall. So you can see this layering where you have the skin with these jalis, and then you have landscape, then you have water, then you have the main building. The next thing is fenestrations. How do we plan the fenestrations? And I want to stress upon one more thing. When we say we design responsibly, it doesn't mean that we forget the aesthetics of architecture. As we all know, architecture is art and engineering and science. So it's a combination of all of these subjects that we learn and we analyze, and we put them together in such a way that the building invites you, it inspires you, and yet it is efficient. It is not just the efficiency. We cannot forget the word about inspiration, and the building should have that positive ambience. If we fail that and we just make it an engineering aspiration of just making it efficient, I think we lose the path as an architect. So we need to respect the fact that we are an architect who designs buildings that make a difference and have a positive impact in people's life. So the fenestrations can be multiple levels and multiple purposes. So if you see this leftmost corner of the window, you have a combination of stack effect, because we have windows on the top, we have windows at the bottom, and then we have windows that are small and windows that are big to accommodate, because this was for a school, to accommodate the vision of a child when he's standing, and also to allow for the vision for an adult when he's standing to look out into the outside. So how do we use water, especially in Bangalore, which is not a humid place, or maybe other places like this was in Raichur, which is not a humid place. It's it's good to use the effect of water, or the evaporative cooling, as you call it. And again, it's a simple insertion. It's we've shaded the water with pergola so that the water doesn't evaporate because of the high heat. We have plants which have hidden the trees so that you can see all the layers. But water plays an important role. So the air that enters the main building is pre-cooled. So courtyard effects. Again, all of these elements that I'm showing you are all present in traditional buildings. It's just that we have incorporated all these elements in a manner that is suitable for today's design aesthetics. So the movement of air through a courtyard, we're aware of that, of how we take in air. If it is hot air, what we have done is we take in air. If you see my mouse, we take in air from a little distant where there's more greenery and all that. Make it go through the earth, because we all are aware that the temperature under the earth, 4 meters under the earth, is always constant. So the heat exchange can happen, and the air that is passing through the pipes gives out its heat to the earth. Then the pre-cooled air can enter the air handling unit to further cool the buildings on every floor. So it's just a simple photograph of when they were laying the pipes for the earth air tunnel in one of the projects. So these are all, again, simple, cost-effective measures for natural cooling. So roof garden, again, we are aware that heat can enter our building from 3 places: from the roof, from the ground, and from the sides, which is the envelope. So we discussed about the envelope through layering, through fenestrations, then the orientation. Then we've discussed about, the earth. Actually, what we do where it is possible is to move the main activities of the office to the first level. So in the ground level, you have activities such as cafeteria, library, which are not used throughout the day. So automatically the heat gain from the ground is also reduced. Then the roof garden, we all know that, we can reduce the storm water, the roof water outflow from the rains to the ground, we can reduce it if you have a roof garden. It also cools the floor below. So again, solar energy. There's always two sides to any renewable measure. Like let's say there's a new movie by Michael Moore, which shows how solar energy is not really effective in terms of not harming the environment, because the amount of solar panels that are going to be discarded in a couple of years, what do we do with that waste? How do we treat it? So that becomes a huge environmental problem, because the solar panels, usually their life is about 20, 25 years is what I have understood from the different manufacturers. So what do we do after its life cycle? So they have to find a solution to that. But as of now, we are still considering that solar panels is good, solar energy is good. So we had proposed solar panels, whether it's a retail or whether it's a house. So these were the different approaches. Now coming to case studies. So I can share two case studies. And one is an office building and one is a retail building. This is a building for Karnataka Power Corporation. And it has also been taken into as one of the 16 or 18 projects by UNDP, that's United Nations Development Program, as a building that is has good or interesting, innovative green building features. So it has been considered for one of their projects, of the 18 projects. And this is coming up in Raichur, where there's also 8 thermal power plants. So majority of Bangalore's electricity comes from Raichur. So this is their administrative building. So they wanted to set an example of being energy efficient, since they are the energy producers. So the key sustainable elements for this building is the orientation, because we had the flexibility of having a larger site, so we were able to orient it correctly. The massing correctly, where the south is higher, the north is cooler, so automatically the terrace is shaded. The fenestrations, we did a lot of calculations to understand and size the fenestrations accordingly. The daylight was also ensured to all parts of the building. So the width of the building was controlled or designed in such a way that the sunlight enters to the middle of the building. Earth air tunnels were used for pre-cooling, layering of buildings. So all the concepts that I was describing earlier has all been incorporated in the best feasible manner. Then the masonry blocks, we used fly ash, because fly ash was a waste product of their coal generation plant. So it's absolutely makes sense for us to use their waste blocks that are made from fly ash. And the chillers are not water cooled, not air cooled. Instead, it is vapor absorption machine, because we were going to use again steam, which is also a waste for them, because that's generated from the power plant. Then the glazing was specified accordingly. We had roof gardens. Then the paints were specified. So all those are simple material specifications. So this is just to show the design process. The first one is just to show the trees that were existing. We had to orient the trees so that none of the trees were disturbed or cut. Then we further oriented it to achieve what we wanted in the plan and still not disturb the surrounding. And then introducing the 2 courtyards. So it's a very simple design process in terms of the massing. So you can see how the courtyards were inserted, such that again all office areas have a visual connection to the outside, that means to the greenery and to the daylight. And the courtyards were again shaded, because Raichur is hot or very hot. Nobody will come into the courtyard if the courtyards are not shaded. So you can see how the daylight is coming into the central part of the building as well. And all the offices, like an open office workstation, so that you're not blocking the daylight to the workstations little away from the window. So again, we have these chajjas that also act to reflect the light. So the light shelves, they also act as light shelves. So we have an extensive system of earth air tunnel, so that the pre-cooled air enters the building. So this is just a summary of the system of layering, where you have the structure, which is a simple, because it was a highly cost-effective building. They were very particular of the fact that we designed it so that it is cost effective and very simple to execute as well, because it's so far away from Bangalore, which is their main head office. So you have the structural shell, then you have the water, then the landscape as a third layer, then you have the fins, the skin, and you have the whole exploded view as well that you can see. So these are again just to show you the layers, multiple layers that we have. So it's almost complete. Hopefully in another 2-3 months, the building should be operational. And we've designed it in such a way that they don't need to use the AC, because in a place like Raichur, they're very comfortable even with 35 degrees. So we have tried to attain, like, let's say 28 to 30 with what we have designed. And with fans, they will be quite comfortable. So all are openable windows with cross ventilation. So they should be able to use the entire building without air conditioning. One of the other buildings that we have completed for Karnataka Power Corporation in Bangalore as well has a lakh square feet building. And similarly, we have designed it such that there's cross ventilation. So even though it's 2.5 lakh square feet, and the last 1.5 years, they have not turned on the AC. The AC has been provided as an option because we told them you don't need to use it. And they have been quite comfortable and quite happy the last 1.5 years without turning it on. So these are just few images. This is just to show you that design has not been compromised because it was a cost efficient building or because it was an energy efficient building. Again, few views. These large triangles, we have left it open because we wanted the local artisans, that's the stone artisans, who are known for their craftsmanship in stone in Raichur, to come in and fill these things with their stone jali work. So the building will feel like it belongs to them. It belongs to the community. So these are just some more views. So you can see the terrace gardens, you can see the fins, the courtyards, the screens in the courtyard. This is actually the bridge that you see on the right that connects to their power plant. The same thing. So the water bodies, currently they do not step out in the open because it's hot or very hot, like I said. So we wanted to give them these exterior spaces that they can come in and sit. They don't have to always be either at their home or within the office. We want them to experience sitting outdoor as well. So we've created these pockets for them to come together outside. So these are the site photographs. Of course, it's gone a little beyond that. I don't have the most updated because we have not visited during the COVID time. So as per the green building specification, it's about 40%. But in reality, if you don't turn on the AC, it's much higher, the percentage. But for green building, we need to show that we're achieving 26 degrees. So based on that 26 degrees, it becomes a 39.40% efficiency. So the second one was an attempt towards net zero. So this is for Puma Global, and it was their first net zero initiative worldwide. So this project was initiated by their headquarters in Europe. It was an invited competition, which we got, and we've completed the building. It's, I think, 5-6 years old already. Again, this is a completely different project from KPCL, where the site is an urban condition. We have very less space. So the challenge is it's a very small space, lot of constraints, because the person who owns the land, the landlord, is different from the person who's going to build it. So we need to make sure that both are happy. And they wanted us to go beyond LEED. They wanted us to be net zero. So in this one, if you see, the main sustainable elements are, we have the earth air tunnel again for pre-cooling. Then we have, you can see these black squares. These are all the underfloor air diffusers. To save energy, we didn't want to cool the upper part. So our human height is 6 feet. So why do we need to cool anything above it? So we've taken the floor diffuser, so we don't waste energy. Then the entire building is suspended. That's the second floor, and first floor and the second floor is suspended from the roof. So what happens is that creates a space all around the building for hot air to rise and go into the roof. So I'll come into that as well. So you can see the design process. Again, it's a simple thing. It's a typical urban condition where you know this is the block. You have to maximize the floor area because it's a landlord and the retail person who's paying the rent per square foot. So we have to maximize the area. So we have a typical block. Inserted the another block within it, keeping all the sides free for air to go up. Then what we did is we cut it up in the ground floor and we've introduced the diffusers in the ground, the blue dots. So you can see the hot air that rises up on all the sides. Then we've cut open for the glass. After that, because it's east facing, we've introduced a huge 18-feet canopy with solar panels, building BIPV panels, so it's generating electricity. So then we have the fins where it's the south side so that the heat gain is reduced in the glass. So you can see a simple the methodology that we have followed to get the massing right. So you can see in the 3D, the same thing that I've explained, the extractors on the roof, and this bottom one is the intake of the air that gets pre-cooled through the earth air tunnel that's under the parking area, gets pre-cooled, goes to the earth air AHU, air handling unit, and gets further cooled if required. If not required, it just comes into the diffusers. Then the hot air rises up on the extractors. And you can also see where it's written social area and retail. That's the entire volume that is suspended from the roof. So with retail, we all know that every few years they need a complete revamp, or they may not even be in this building anymore. They may move on. So you don't know the change that happens in retail because it's very fast. So what we have done to minimize construction waste, allow for adaptability, allow for flexibility, this entire first and second is completely removable because it's just metal and bamboo. So it can be reused the same way and assembled in a different location, or it can be dismantled completely and reused in whichever manner they want. So this is to show you the suspended area. And it's an exploded view of all the different parts or the elements that have made this building holistically, environmentally responsible. And even without AC, the building can work at least 8 months in a year, 8 to 9 months in a year, because retail, they have to not just keep 26, they need 23, 24. So it was still, we monitored all the numbers for the first 1 year as per green building. And we found out that they were able to use it without AC because Bangalore has a fantastic weather condition. Only constraint over here was no glass could be openable. So that is why we had to have the system of air constantly being sucked out so that there's a air change, constant air change, because we cannot keep glass open because of safety reasons for a retail. So through this earth air tunnel and extractors on roof, we were able to achieve this continuous movement. And this design was also featured in NDTV, and it has been published in many articles internationally as well as nationally. The reason being, it was one of the first retail that could function without air conditioning with closed glass. So it was a completely different concept for the retail players to understand that this is possible. We could do this on a much larger scale with just simple solutions based on, again, the traditional wisdom. So these are just the plans. You can see the simplicity of the planning because we need to maximize. We cannot forget what is required for people, but take this as a constraint that will help us innovate further. So this is just to show you the earth air tunnel and how much energy we were able to reduce. And you can see the photograph also. It's simple, not highly skilled labor. It's regular plumbers who have executed this job. So these are few photographs of the Puma building. So again, coming back to design, like I'm stressing again, we have not compromised on the design. Detailing and designing to ensure the quality of what needs to be achieved as an architect should never be compromised. So again, to minimize material, the false ceilings have been avoided. The lighting was tested multiple times to ensure that even though it's LED lighting, a lot of times for retail, they prefer not to go with LED because of the color rendering. So we did multiple tests till they were comfortable with the color rendering achieved by these LED lights. So I just showed you, touched upon two different projects. So to end it, I would like to say each of us have a role to play. So make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood and probably themselves will not be realized. It's important for us to make big plans, aim high and hope and work to make a difference in society. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very insightful presentation, Architect Meghna. It was a much needed reminder on climate change and design ethics. The different case studies that you've shown definitely made us ponder on the many strategies that we should ideally be adopting from the vernacular system and the amount of thought and innovation that needs to go into designing itself. So I had a couple of questions.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So there are two schools of thought that are observed that I observed with respect to green. So there's materials that are directly sourced from nature, and then there are materials that are byproducts of manufacturing processes of other materials or products. So in your projects, how do you give the weightage to the choice of materials itself, or is it something that you let the function decide?
So in terms of materiality, once we have a design vision that is set for a particular project as to what is it that we want the building to talk about or stand for, that is the first thing. That's first step. Then the next step is once we have the vision clear, then we decide on the materials. And of course, the importance is always given to materials that are locally sourced because that would work well for the environment for that particular city. Like let's say if it's Bangalore, we all know that Bangalore sits on granite. So there's a lot of granite available. So if we have to use it, you'd rather use granite. But or let's say if it was in Raichur, we've not used granite. We've gone for more local materials such as shabad or things that are available easily over there. Then when it came to blocks, the minute you see what is the waste generated in that area, which was fly ash, you'd rather use fly ash blocks than get the concrete blocks from here. Then the second aspect of materials is also to bring in the craftsmanship of the local artisans. So let's say in Raichur, we want to make use of the local artisans of stone, right? Whereas let's say if we want something with wood, we would say, let's say if it was in Tamil Nadu or, we would want to use the craftsmanship of the wood. So use more wood. So it depends from project to project. And also it depends on, again, if we say wood, what type of wood? Is it forest certified, wood? That's Stewardship Council, FSC wood, because you don't want to take wood from a forest that is not managed properly. And can we minimize wood also? Because again, we don't want to use something that is not the best for the environment in terms of, you don't want to kill more trees. So you have to, it's a combination of analysis that goes in behind the project before we decide on the material specification.
All right. So, while most of your clients have asked for green or sustainable structures, was payback period a concern for any of the projects that you did, or did any of the builders themselves come up with points that are against, the running, the short-term running of that building?
So there's a very valid question that nobody wants to spend more money than it's required, right? So unless you, as an architect, explain to them the cost benefit analysis, they will not buy it. So even before they ask you, it's always important that we put it forward. Saying you do this, this is what you will get. So finally, it's a consumeristic society and a society that is, where numbers are everything for most people. So we also tell them that what is the biggest cost per square foot in a company? What is the biggest cost? You tell me.
The biggest cost for?
Per square foot cost, they'll say, right? What is
Yeah.
the per square foot cost for a company
For a company
to run their office?
to run their office would probably be the ventilation, heating.
No, the salaries they pay to people.
Okay.
Right. Now, if you are happy in the building, or if the people who work in the office are happy in the building, they would automatically increase their efficiency easily by 10% without you telling them anything, no other incentive. And that 10% is enough for us to justify the building additional cost. Every day you want to come into the same workplace, you need to be inspired by the building. And a good, responsible building that I'm talking about is very simple. You have good sunlight, you have landscape, it's designed well, the detailing is well, from a simple table to a chair to your false ceiling or your flooring. I mean, these are the small little details, and you have a little bit of the craftsmanship that's incorporated into your design. From the compound wall to the gate to your lighting, if it's all done right, you've saved more than 10%. So, which is what we always try and tell them. Please understand that is your biggest cost, not your air conditioning, not your flooring. Nobody is asking you to put marble or put, expensive paint. We don't specify that. We're specifying very simple materials, natural materials. It's just that it's designed in such a way that it's appeasing or welcoming.
Yes, that makes so much more sense. So, did you ever do a project where retrofitting the existing building to make it more sustainable was needed as the end product?
Yeah, we have done quite a few retrofit projects where I think one of our first project that we actually won an international award for as well was a retrofit project in the heart of the market area of a city. So it was quite a challenge, but I think the adaptive reuse is an important aspect that we as architects should understand and move forward to explain the clients that it can be done. You don't have to bring it down or tear it apart. We can do this adaptive reuse. Because there's also, I'm not talking for every project, but there's certain buildings that are like, let's say, quite old, but it has a heritage value in some sense. It may not be considered as a heritage building, but still has that value in people's hearts, people's minds, for people who've been living in that city or in that area. So especially those kind of buildings, I feel we as public should retain and give the client the option of saying, see, this is what can be done.
Thank you for so patiently answering all the questions. And
Thank
on
you,
behalf
Shruti.
of Glass Academy and Azad Ethos, thank you so much for joining us today, Architect.
Thank you, Shruti. Nice talking to you.